Chapter 280. Look after the child. I'll go out and take a look, she said to Lung Shuang and walked out. When he opened the door, he saw the ghosts lying on the ground, screaming miserably. Streams of glowing air whizzed down from the air and whipped the ghosts, producing sharp whooshing sounds. When she saw the ghosts on the ground become very faint, as if they would disappear at any time, her eyes flickered. She raised her head and glanced at the Daoist priest who was waving his horsetail whisk. She moved her fingers, and a silver needle appeared between them. With a whoosh, the needle shot towards the man in the air. Whoosh! The silver needle was swept away by the Daoist priest's horsetail whisk, and he also stopped whipping the ghosts. Instead, he glared at Fengjiu and shouted in a deep voice, "You little brat, who are you? How dare you associate with ghosts? You really deserve to die." As he spoke, he waved his horsetail whisk, and a stream of airflow attacked Fengjiu. Whoosh! Fengjiu calmly dodged the murderous aura. He glanced at the Daoist priest and said, "You used a killing move right from the start. Could it be that you also think I'm a wandering ghost? Ha 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 ha. Brat, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. So what if I kill you?" The Daoist priest laughed loudly. His voice was arrogant and ruthless, without the mercy of a Daoist priest. "Young master, leave quickly. This old Daoist priest is at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. Young master, don't fight him head-on. Quickly take my son and escape." The man who stood up shakily shouted at Fengjiu. He thought that if they delayed the Daoist priest, his son and the young man would have a chance to live. Fengjiu glanced at them and didn't say anything. Instead, he raised his eyes and glanced at the Daoist priest. A faint smile appeared on his lips. "Many people wanted to kill me along the way, but in the end, I killed them all." Her voice was lazy and indifferent. She really didn't care about a mere peak of the Foundation establishment realm cultivator. "If you leave now, I can spare your life." She looked at the Daoist priest in the air and said with a serious expression. She didn't seem to be joking. However, no one took her words seriously. In their opinion, this young man wasn't even a Foundation establishment cultivator. How could he kill the old Daoist priest? The old Daoist priest thought the same, and thus, when he heard her words, he laughed disdainfully. You, I'm afraid you don't." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the red-robed man, who had been lying on the ground, suddenly rise up. A long sword with a cold light appeared in his hand. The red-robed man's eyes flashed, and in the next moment, he felt a pain in his chest. His entire body stiffened, and he looked at the red-robed man and the sword in his hand in shock and disbelief. Ching Feng's sword. You! Bang! Fengjiu kicked the old Daoist priest and pulled out his sword. He looked at the old Daoist priest who was falling to the ground and sneered. "I told you to leave, but you didn't. This is your fate." The old Daoist priest died before he could take a breath. Even in death, he didn't know who the young man in red was. Why was he holding the green-edged sword? He couldn't understand how a Foundation establishment cultivator like him could be killed by a young man who hadn't even reached the Foundation establishment realm. He couldn't accept that the young man attacked him without saying anything. He died with regret. Chapter 281. Fengjiu wiped the Qingfeng sword clean and put it back into the sword sheath with a whoosh. She walked forward and took everything from the Daoist priest. She didn't even let go of the whisk because it was a magic weapon. Even if she couldn't use it, she could sell it for money. "Thank you, young master, thank you." The sound of gratitude behind her made Fengjiu turn around and see the four spirits kneeling on the ground with a face full of excitement. "Get up. I still have something to ask you." She shot out a flame from her hand and burned the Daoist's body. "Yes, what does young master want to ask?" They helped each other to stand up. Their bodies were slightly translucent and their souls seemed to be unstable. Fengjiu looked at them and said, "Ghosts are ghosts. I want to know, how did you manage to keep your souls from dispersing? If one of you condensed into a spirit due to hatred or worries, it would make sense, but you are a family of four, right? How did you all manage to keep your souls together? Young master, please follow us." As the four spoke, they brought her to the back of another house and dug out a piece of reddish-brown wood from the ground. To tell you the truth, young master, the reason why we were able to condense our souls and prevent them from dispersing was because 2 years ago, a Daoist priest asked for a cup of water to drink and we made him a vegetarian meal. He said that we had no evil in our hearts and only had good intentions. Seeing that my grandson Yang Yang was still an infant, he gave us a piece of divine soul wood so that we could rest in it and nourish our souls. He repeatedly told us not to harm anyone. For the past 2 years, we have kept this in mind day and night. We have been grateful and did not dare to do any evil. However, we did not expect that we would be targeted by that Daoist priest. Hearing this and looking at the god's soul wood, she finally understood that there was such a thing. Then, she asked again, since that Daoist was kind and you were spirits, why didn't you hand Yang Yang over to him? We did. This time, it was the young man who spoke. He looked at Fengjiu and said, at that time, we asked that master to take Yang Yang away. After all, as ghosts, it's inevitable that we'll be tainted with yin qi. We were afraid that it wouldn't be good for the child to be with us. However, the master declined and said that when the time is right, there will be a benefactor to help. After tonight, we found out that the benefactor the master was talking about is actually young master. Fengjiu rubbed his chin and thought to himself, is there really such an expert in this world who can calculate? That Daoist is dead. What do you plan to do next? She looked at them and asked. Young master, please take Yang Yang away. We are ghosts. We can't be with him. The woman sobbed. Even though she was reluctant, there was nothing she could do. Young master, please take our grandson away. We can only repay young master's kindness in our next life. The old man and the old woman bowed to Fengjiu. The young man hugged the woman and said, as long as Yang Yang can live, it's more important than anything else. Young master, we'll leave Yang Yang in your hands. We don't have anything to give young master. That god's soul wood is a top-grade spiritual item. Young master, please take it with you. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at them. The god's soul wood was indeed a good item. It was an ancient divine wood. The Daoist who left it behind was quite generous to leave them such a piece of God's soul wood. However, she was a person with principles. She wasn't someone who would accept everything. Chapter 282. When he said this, the 4 of them were stunned. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Young master, you're saying that there's a technique that ghosts can cultivate. Was this real or fake? After all, ghost cultivators' techniques were much harder to find than cultivators' techniques. When they were still alive, they had only heard of it but had never seen it. If they had a technique that could allow them to cultivate into ghost cultivators, they would not have to worry about running out of yin qi and not being able to survive in this world. Furthermore, once ghost cultivators reach a certain level of cultivation, they would not be afraid of the sun's rays. Even during the day, they would be able to go out and walk around freely. It goes without saying that this was an irresistible temptation to them. Not only could they become ghost cultivators, they could also protect Yang Yang. This was something that they had never dared to imagine. That's right. Fengjiu nodded in response and said seriously, however, if you follow me, you must serve me as your master and not harm others. Otherwise, I will destroy your souls even without anyone else taking you in. We're willing to serve you as our master. We'll never betray you. If we go back on our words today, we're willing to be struck by lightning and have our souls destroyed, never to be reincarnated. The 4 of them knelt down respectfully and spoke excitedly. To them, whether it was serving the person in front of them as their master or being able to cultivate into ghost cultivators, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. Even if he did not have a technique for them to cultivate, they would never betray him just because he had saved them today. All right, you can return to the god's soul wood to recuperate. I have a mountain villa that you can guard and cultivate there. As for Yang Yang, since you've left her to me, don't go near her until you can control your yin qi skillfully. Yes. The 4 of them replied. I still don't know your names. She asked as she looked at them. Master, I'm Zhao Yuhe. This is my wife, Lin Xinhui. This is my father, Zhao Degao, and my mother, Fan Huan. Hearing this, Fengjiu said, I'm Fengjiu. That's all. Anyway, it's going to be daybreak soon. Let's leave. As she spoke, she went outside. Lung Shuang carried the sleeping Yang Yang and waited beside Laro Bai. Chochio, who was lying on the horse, glanced at them lazily before closing his eyes and going back to sleep. She took out a spaceship and threw it into the air. As the spaceship grew bigger, she said to Lung Shuang, "Carry Yang Yang to the room inside first." "Yes." Lung Shuang acknowledged and boarded the spaceship first. After settling Yang Yang down, he came down and blindfolded the horse and tied it to the spaceship. He then brought Laro Bai aboard as well. When the Zhao family members saw the flying ship, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. It was actually a spaceship, and such a luxurious one at that. What was the background of the master they were following? "You guys go into the Divine Soul Wood." Fengjiu gestured for them to return to the Divine Soul Wood. The four of them acknowledged and then turned into 4 rays of light that entered the Divine Soul Wood. Fengjiu brought them onto the spaceship and they headed towards the country of Glorious Sun. 2 days later, because the spaceship was too conspicuous, she kept Feng Fei when they arrived at a town near the border of the country of Glorious Sunday. The 3 of them rode on horses and headed towards the city. Since they had time, they weren't in a hurry to return to Yunyu City. Chapter 283. No matter where the beautiful Feng Ju went, she naturally attracted everyone's attention. Not to mention her beautiful appearance, just her outstanding figure and temperament were extremely rare even among the aristocratic families in prosperous places, let alone in this relatively remote town on the border. Lung Shuang was still dressed in tight black clothes, outlining her exquisite figure. Her cold face was like ice, and although she was beautiful, no one dared to approach her. Because they had entered the city, they rode slowly on their horses. Yang Yang, who was sitting in front of Fengjiu, looked around curiously with a face full of curiosity. Fengjiu turned her head slightly and said, "Lung Shuang, we'll wait for you at the wonton stall in front. Go buy some dry rations so we can eat on the way. Also, buy some pastries and snacks for Yang Yang." "Yes." Lung Shuang responded and rode forward with her legs clamped on the horse. Fengjiu and Yang Yang went to the wonton stall not far ahead and ordered 2 bowls of wontons to eat as they waited. "Elder sister Feng, the city is so beautiful. There are so many things that Yang Yang has never seen before." The little guy looked at her with bright eyes, and his entire body was filled with joy. "Elder sister's house is even more beautiful." She smiled and rubbed his little head, saying, "Hurry up and eat. Once you're done, we'll be on our way." "Ien. The little guy nodded excitedly and used a spoon to eat his wontons. Along the way, Yang Yang's obedient and sensible behavior made her very fond of him. She couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile when she saw him leaning his little face against the big bowl and eating the wontons in such a cute and adorable manner. On the 2nd floor of the restaurant opposite the wonton stall, a man in a navy blue robe stood by the window with his hands behind his back. He inadvertently glanced at the beautiful woman in a white dress at the stall and saw the gentle smile on her slightly tilted face. With just one glance, he could not move his eyes away. So beautiful. Even though he had seen many beauties, he had to admit that this white-clothed woman really gave him a breathtaking feeling. Looking at her sitting in that simple and crude place, her posture was languid and casual, but under her languid and casual attitude, there was a calmness and elegance that could not be ignored that came from her bones. Perhaps because she sensed that he was looking at her, the smile on the woman's face disappeared and she looked up at him. When their eyes met, his heart trembled slightly. What a beautiful pair of eyes! Her clear eyes were deep and bottomless, yet they concealed a fierce sharpness. Originally, when he looked at her, he thought she was only a delicate and peerless beauty, but this glance allowed him to know that this woman was absolutely not an ordinary person. Her gaze had an intimidating aura. Her clear eyes were cold and indifferent. She didn't avoid his gaze, nor was she bashful. She met his gaze with scrutiny. Seeing this, the corner of his lips curled up and interest appeared in his eyes. A middle-aged man standing behind the man saw this and followed his gaze. His gaze also fell on the woman in white at the stall. He only sized her up for a moment before withdrawing his gaze and respectfully standing behind the man. Fengjiu withdrew his gaze and began to eat his wontons. The man's aura was extraordinary and she guessed that he was not an ordinary person. She was just passing by and didn't want any accidents to happen on the way, so she didn't pay any attention to the man. Chapter 284. I think it's a girl in black. She's quite pretty, but it's a pity that she ran into that pair of siblings. Let's go and take a look. No one in our city has ever dared to compete with them. I'm guessing that she's from another city. Her phoenix eyes flashed when she heard those words. She looked in the direction where the crowd had run off to watch the commotion. She paused for a moment before asking, Yang, are you done eating? I'm full, but I haven't finished eating. What should I do? The little fellow couldn't bear to waste food and was still drinking soup. He looked at the remaining wontons in his bowl with a reluctant expression. Fengjiu chuckled when she saw this. She rubbed his head and said, Don't eat any more if you're full. Don't overeat. There will be pastries later. She smiled as she paid the bill. Then, she held his hand with one hand and Laro by with the other and walked towards the crowd. Master, are you interested in that girl? Do you want me to invite her over? The middle-aged man on the second floor asked when he saw that his master's gaze was following the girl in white. The man standing with his hands behind his back turned around and glanced at him when he heard this. He said, Do you think you can invite her over? The middle-aged man was stunned when he heard this. He asked in confusion, Master, what do you mean? How could he not invite a girl over? Furthermore, with his master's status, it would be too easy for him to invite that girl over. The man didn't say anything. When he saw the white figure walking towards the crowd, he turned around and walked down the stairs, intending to follow and take a look. The middle-aged man hurriedly followed after him when he saw this. In an empty space surrounded by the crowd, a thin man was being pressed down by a fat woman. He couldn't get up for a long time because the fat woman's weight was all on him. His entire face was flushed red and even breathing was difficult for him. Quick, get up quickly. The man tried to push the fat woman up, but he couldn't move her at all. Woo! Brother! My chest hurts. She kicked me in the chest. It hurts so much. It hurts so much that I can't stand up. The fat woman was lying on her back facing the sky. Because her brother was below her as a human cushion, she didn't feel any pain when she fell. But because her chest was kicked, she couldn't catch her breath. She didn't even have the strength to stand up. Lung Shuang, who was dressed in black tights, coldly glanced at the two men. When he was about to leave with his horse, he saw his master standing in the crowd with Laro Bai and Yang. He immediately walked towards her. Master, everything has been purchased. Fengjiu glanced at the two on the ground and nodded, then let's go. She carried Yang onto Laro Bai's back and climbed up as well. Her legs clamped around Laro Bai's abdomen as she let out a low shout and charged forward. Lung Shuang also jumped onto his horse and followed behind her. Seeing the two women leave on their horses, the surrounding people couldn't help but be stunned. They only felt that these two people were really gutsy, beating up the two local rich people and leaving just like that. Seeing this, the eyes of the man in the crowd lit up. He didn't expect to meet such a beautiful woman on this trip to a small ninth-class country like the glorious Sun Empire. Seeing the white figure gradually disappear into the distance, he didn't stop and chased after the figure in front of him. Chapter 285. Fengjiu rode on Laro Bai's back. Because they were on the main street, their speed wasn't fast. She didn't ask Lung Shuang what had happened earlier. It was as if the previous scene had never happened. She didn't care. Actually, it wasn't that she didn't care. She knew that Lung Shuang was fine, so there wasn't anything that she should care about. Mistress, someone is following us. Lung Shuang, who was riding beside Fengjiu, spoke up. His eyes were like frost as he looked at the man who was following them unhurriedly. Let's go. Don't worry about him. Fengjiu said nonchalantly. She didn't need to turn around to know that it was the man who had been upstairs earlier. The man's invasive gaze made it difficult for her to ignore him. If he dared to follow them, then so be it. She wanted to see how he was going to follow them. Where are the snacks I asked you to buy for Yang? Give me some. She reached out to Lung Shuang. Here. I bought some sugar lotus seeds. Lung Shuang handed her a small bag. Feng Jiu took it and handed it to Yang Yang, who was sitting in front of her. Here, take it and eat it. But don't eat too much at once. Thank you, big sister Feng. Yang Yang smiled happily and thanked her. Good boy. She pinched his little face and smiled. The man following behind her had been watching. Although he could only see her back most of the time, her every move, every frown, and every smile fell into his eyes, making him look at her with interest. The two people in front of them rode their horses until they exited the city gates. The two people behind them continued to follow. The difference was that after exiting the city gates, the two of them flew on their swords and were less than 10 meters behind Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu didn't take them seriously, and Lung Shuang didn't pay any attention to them either, because they just followed her and didn't do anything else. Even so, she was still on guard. Just like that, the group moved forward in this strange way. Feng Jiu, who was at the front, gently raised her hand to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Feeling the light breeze blowing against her face, a faint light flashed across her eyes, and the corner of her mouth curled up into a strange smile. About the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn past. Suddenly, the sound of two heavy objects falling to the ground and two muffled groans came from behind. Bang! Bang! Yes. Lung Shuang had been paying attention to his back the entire time, so when he saw the flying sword fall from a height of more than 2 meters without warning, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. She looked at her master and saw the smile on her master's face. Only then did she understand that it was her master who had done it. Master, are you all right? The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He was extremely shocked by the sudden disappearance of his spiritual aura. After falling to the ground, he didn't care about the mud and dust on his body and hurriedly looked around vigilantly. The man was also extremely shocked. He looked in astonishment at the white figure in front of him, who had turned around on her horse. He only felt that it was inconceivable. He had been careless. He didn't think that this woman would have such great ability. She didn't even need to turn around or attack them, but she was able to make them lose all their spiritual aura without them noticing. Could it be that she was a pharmacist? But that was impossible. How could a small 9th-ranked country like the glorious Sun Empire produce such a noble pharmacist? Then, there was only one other possibility. Chapter 286. Feng Jiu sat on Larobai's back and looked down at the two men on the ground. His voice was lazy and cold. You'd better not follow me. Otherwise, it won't be so simple next time. After giving the warning, he turned around and clamped his legs around Larobai's abdomen as he shouted. Larobai quickly ran forward. Lung Shuang immediately rode his horse and chased after him. Not long after, the two disappeared from the sight of the two men on the ground. Master, this woman is indeed not an ordinary person. The middle-aged man saw them riding away and could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. To be able to take down the two of them so silently was really out of his expectations. The man laughed and a dark light flashed across his eyes. I told you she was not ordinary. This proves that my taste is not bad. I'm just glad that she didn't try to kill us. Under such circumstances, if she wanted to kill them, they would most likely be doomed. The man glanced at him and said, She doesn't even know who we are and we have no grudges with her. Why would she kill us? His voice paused, and the corners of his lips curled up. A determined look appeared in his eyes as he said, I just didn't expect that a small Tier 9 country like the country of Glorious Sun would have such a beautiful woman. It's really unforgettable. Yes, in just a short encounter, this woman had aroused his desire to have her. The first thing that attracted his attention was her peerless beauty, followed by her temperament, as well as the hidden sharpness in her eyes. What he did not expect was that she would be able to take down the two of them without making a sound, and without any effort at all. This scheming and this method made him, who originally only had the intention of hunting her, really want to do it. This woman, he wanted to have her. He thought that if he could conquer this proud and aloof woman, he would definitely feel a great sense of accomplishment. Feng Jiu did not know what this man was thinking. If he knew, he would probably come back and stab him. The two of them supported each other to the side of the road and sat down to rest. After about 2 hours, the effects of the medicine dissipated and the spiritual energy in their bodies recovered. Master, should we return to Qingtang Kingdom first? The middle-aged man looked at him and asked. The man pondered for a moment and said, let's go back first and send someone to investigate that woman's identity. Yes. The middle-aged man replied helplessly. Although he felt that it was best not to provoke that woman, since his master was interested, he could only do as he was told. On the other side, Lung Shuang was puzzled and asked, Master, when did you use the medicine? Why didn't I see it? At that time, the person behind her had been staring at her, so how did she manage to not be noticed? Feng Jiu curled his lips and smiled. If you saw it, how could you make them fall for it? She looked at the road ahead and said, when we reach Yunyu City, take the Divine Soul Wood to Mahogany Dock. Have them guard that place. Also, call your younger brother back to the Feng Manor. Hearing this, a faint smile appeared on Lung Shuang's face. Yes. Thinking of her younger brother, her heart softened. Half a month later, they arrived at Yunyu City. After entering Yunyu City, Feng Jiu and Lung Shuang went their separate ways. Lung Shuang rode his horse to Mahogany Dock, while she rode Laro Bai to bring Yang Yang and Qiu Qiu to the Feng Manor. Chapter 287. Did you hear? Apparently, Guan Shalin, who left the Guan family, has become the #1 expert on the black market's Huang ranking. We already knew about this 2 days ago. Actually, that Guan Shalin's battle prowess and talent are truly shocking. I went to the black market's arena to watch him fight. His skills are truly amazing. For the Guan family to chase him out, it really is their loss. But of course, recently, quite a few families have been trying to rope him in. Some even want to use marriage to bring him into the family. But I heard that he wants to establish his own family, so many people are at a loss. That's right. Didn't he buy the large residence next to the Feng Manor? I heard that he's been preparing for it recently. It seems that he's just waiting for an auspicious day to enter. Then the Guan family is probably dying of regret. Haha, that's for sure. The eldest young miss of the Feng Manor hasn't appeared recently. It seems that she went out to train. Speaking of the Feng family's young miss, it really is inconceivable. She actually had old Master Feng cancel the marriage with the third prince. Could it be that she's not afraid that her face will be ruined and she won't be able to get married after cancelling the marriage? So what if she can't get married? The Feng Manor only has her blood. Even if she doesn't marry into the Feng Manor, they can still raise her. However, didn't I hear that the third prince refused to cancel the marriage? It seems that this matter is still being delayed. The third prince is the most outstanding of the younger generation in Yarrow Ri. In truth, the Feng family's eldest young miss being able to marry him can be considered the fortune of 3 lifetimes. I really don't know if she. As that person spoke, he inadvertently glanced over and immediately widened his eyes in shock. The 2 people to the side saw this and turned around to look. What they saw also caused them to widen their eyes in shock. Aside from disbelief, they were also a bit embarrassed. They never thought that the person involved would hear them talking about someone behind their back. Hearing those words, Feng Jiu faintly smiled. Glancing at those people, he rode Laro Bai back to the Feng Manor. So it turned out that her brother had already become #1 on the black market's Huang ranking in such a short amount of time. He had even bought a residence. As for her marriage with Murong Yi Xian, that would be settled when she returned. Once she was far away, those people finally managed to recover after a while. They stammered, that person is the Feng Manor's eldest young miss, Feng Qingji, right? Has her face recovered? It seems that he has recovered. He said that he went out to train. I guess he went to find a doctor to treat his face. Another person said, his eyes full of amazement. She is indeed the #1 beauty of Glorious Sunday. Her appearance and temperament are truly breathtaking. Because Feng Jiu was riding on Laro Bai, who looked like both a dragon and a horse, it was very conspicuous. Coupled with the fact that her face had been restored, her peerless beauty caused everyone who saw her to cry out in surprise. Isn't that the Feng family's young miss, Feng Qingge? Look. Has her disfigured face recovered? There were many citizens in Cloud Moon City who were familiar with her. Along the way to the Feng Manor, everywhere she went, the citizens would exclaim and discuss. Do you know? The Feng family's young miss, Feng Chinga, had returned. Her face has also recovered. Word of mouth spread like wildfire, and it didn't take long for everyone to hear the news. Inside Murong Yixian's manor, Murong Yixian stood up from behind the desk. His eyes were filled with surprise as he looked at the guard and asked, You said Qing Ji has returned? Yes, the Feng family's eldest young miss has returned. Because she was riding a strange horse on the streets, many people saw her. Also, her disfigured face has recovered. Chapter 288. Before she reached the Feng Manor's gates, her family, who had heard that she had returned, were already waiting outside with joyous expressions. Feng Xiao supported the old man as he waited outside. His eyes were filled with joy as he occasionally looked towards the main street and excitedly chattered. This child really is something. Even when she goes out, she acts first and reports later. These past few days, I haven't been able to sleep well. Every day, I've been worried about whether or not she would run into any danger outside. If she had brought the phone guards with her, that would have been fine, but she only brought that girl, Lung Shuang. Fortunately, she has returned safely. I can finally put down the heavy stone in my heart. TSK. You only have this bit of ambition. The old man glared at him, but his face was filled with a smile. The joy and excitement that came from the bottom of his heart infected everyone at his side, causing everyone to look forward to the eldest young miss return. She's coming, she's coming. The eldest young miss has returned. A servant shouted in joy, pointing at the white figure that had appeared on the main street. Because she was riding Laro Bai and was slowly approaching from a high place, everyone saw her as soon as she appeared. After everyone rejoiced, they saw that the eldest young miss' ruined face had truly recovered its former beauty. They could not help but shout in joy. Elder Master, Master, the eldest young miss' face has truly recovered. Ha, 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 Phone Girl has returned. Quickly, quickly set off the firecrackers, the old man happily shouted. Following his voice, the sound of firecrackers began to crackle in front of the Feng Manor's gates. It immediately attracted the surrounding people to gather around, and they all looked around curiously. Feng Jiu, who was riding Laro Bai, could see the joyous expressions of his family from a distance. He could not help but reveal a smile. Seeing that they were setting off firecrackers in front of the gate, a joyous and lively atmosphere immediately filled the air. Yang Yang, who was sitting in front, saw this lively scene and leaned back slightly. Grabbing his sleeve, he was both happy and a bit timid. Sensing his uneasiness, Feng Jiu smiled and gently patted his little head. Only then did he look at the two people coming over and call out. Grandfather, Father, I've returned. You child, how could you leave without discussing it with your father? Father has been worried about you all this time. It's good that you're back now. He went forward to hold Laro Bai's hand. When he saw the child sitting in front of him, he asked in surprise, Where did this child come from? Feng Jiu dismounted and carried Yang Yang down. Why are you asking so many questions? They were still on the streets. Come on, let's go home first. The old master glared at Feng Xiao and ordered his men to take the horse away. Who would have thought that the guards would not be able to drag Old White at all? Young miss, we can't drag this horse away. The guard rubbed his nose and said embarrassedly. Hearing this, Feng Jiu chuckled. He stroked Laro Bai's head and whispered a few words into his ear. Laro Bai wagged his tail and then stomped his hooves to walk away. As for Chiu Chiu, who was mixed in with the crowd, he had already run inside and wandered around the Feng Manor. Haha, this horse is not bad, but it looks a little strange. Feng Xiao laughed loudly. Looking at the white horse that was shaped like a dragon, he was a bit curious as to what breed it was. Grandfather Feng, Uncle Feng. The young voice was a bit timid as he called out. The old master and Feng Xiao were startled. Seeing the child leaning against the Feng girl's side, his clear eyes carried a trace of unease and fear, the two could not help but smile and praise him. Good child, let's go inside first. Chapter 289. Qingji. The sound of Qing Ji's voice caused everyone who had already stepped through the door to pause their steps and turn back to look. Seeing the purple-robed noble figure standing not far from the Feng manor, everyone could not help but look towards the white-robed Feng Qing Ji, who had an extremely beautiful appearance and a cold body. The person who came was the third prince, Murong Yixuan, her fiancé. Although the old man had proposed to cancel the marriage between the two of them, due to Murong Yixuan's unwillingness, the marriage was still delayed until now and the relationship between the two of them had yet to be broken. The surrounding commoners were originally not optimistic about the marriage between the two because Murong Yixuan was the most talented among the new generation of glorious son and had the most promising future. As for Feng Qingge, even though she was the eldest young miss of the Feng manor and the number one beauty of the glorious Sun Empire, in this world where strength was respected, her strength was nothing special in the eyes of the world. In fact, even some of the children of the first wife of the family were more talented than her, not to mention the fact that her face had been completely disfigured. Even if her face had been restored, her cultivation was still too weak. In the eyes of the crowd, she was still not worthy of Murong Yixuan. After all, the person standing next to a favored son of heaven must be a woman with first-class appearance and strength. You all go in first. She handed Yang to her grandfather and let them go in first. All right, then you all go ahead and talk. If you really can't do it, then call him in. The old man said, then led Yang inside. Feng Xiao glanced at Murong Yixuan, shook his head, sighed and also walked in. Although he was quite satisfied with Murong Yixuan, unfortunately, his daughter didn't like him and he couldn't do anything about it. No matter how satisfied he was with him, everything had to be done according to his daughter's wishes. Murong Yixuan walked forward and saw that the scars on her face had all disappeared. Her complexion had returned to its previous smooth and flawless appearance. Looking at such a beautiful but distant her, his heart ached slightly but a gentle smile appeared on his face. There's a tea house not far ahead. Let's go and have a drink. Feng Jiu glanced at him and saw that there were many commoners watching them. He nodded and followed him to a room on the second floor of the tea house not far away. In the room, the atmosphere was slightly stiff. There was no intimacy between lovers, no shyness, and no infatuation. The two of them sat at the table and Murong Yixuan poured tea for her. Looking at her indifferent and distant expression, he narrowed his eyes slightly to hide the pain in his eyes and stared at the tea in his hand. Grandfather Feng went to find my father to ask about cancelling the marriage but I didn't agree. Feng Jiu picked up the teacup and took a sip. When he heard this, his eyes moved slightly. He glanced at him and said, I've already told you about the engagement. We're not suitable for each other. There's no point in dragging it out. Not suitable? He raised his eyes to look at her indifferent expression and smiled bitterly. We can be said to be childhood sweethearts. How can we not be suitable? I know you must be angry because I didn't recognize you back then. I also know that it was my fault. But Qingge, can't you give me another chance? Feng Jiu shook her head with a smile when she heard this. Her clear eyes were sharp as if she had seen through everything, and her clear and unhurried voice sounded out from her mouth in a neither fast nor slow manner, and it struck mercilessly at his heart. Chapter 290. Hearing this, Murong Yixuan's hand trembled as he held onto the teacup. Under her gaze, he slowly lowered his gaze and his face paled slightly. Seeing his expression, she tugged at the corner of her mouth and said, Since you know, why pretend that you don't know anything? Perhaps the previous Feng Qingge had fallen in love with you, but I, Feng Jiu, will not. You are like a stranger to me, so I must cancel this marriage. Feng Jiu. He raised his eyes and looked at her. That's right, I'm Feng Jiu. I can also be called Feng Qingge, but I'm definitely not the Feng Qingge who had fallen in love with you. Hearing this, his lips moved as if he wanted to ask something, but in the end, he did not ask anything. He brought the teacup to his lips and took a sip, calming his heart. After a long while, he said, I understand. I agree to cancel this marriage. That would be for the best. The corner of her lips curled up, revealing a smile. Seeing her face overflowing with joy, his eyes flashed and said, I want to get to know you again. Under her stunned gaze, he revealed a gentle smile. You're right. The first time we met in the restaurant, The second time we met in the Peach Blossom Cove, and the second time we met on the street, you stunned me and made my heart beat faster. I was unable to forget you, so even if the marriage is cancelled, I will still pursue you. Feng Jiu shook her head and stood up, smiling. I advise you not to waste your time on me. Go and cultivate properly. After leaving behind these words, she left. She was very clear that she would not fall in love with someone like Murong Yixian. Although he was very outstanding, he was not suitable for her. Seeing her turn and leave, he did not stop her because he knew that as long as he was strong enough and outstanding enough, then there would come a day when she would be his woman. In this world where strength was respected, the strong would be respected and the weak would not be able to survive. Even if she had the Feng manor behind her, this world was so big that there would come a day when she would know that only the strong could protect her. And she was right. He did need to cultivate diligently. The glorious Sun Country was only a stepping stone for him. He would not spend his entire life here. Outside, there was a wider sky for him to soar in. Feng Manafengjiu heard Guan Shilin's voice before he even entered the living room. Why isn't Xiao Ju back yet? That Murong Yixian is really something. It's really boring for a man to be so wishy-washy. Who said I didn't come back? She walked in with a smile. Guan Shilin, who was sitting down, greeted her happily as soon as he saw her. Xiao Ju, you're finally back. I rushed back as soon as I heard that you were back. You're about to enter the residence, how can I not come back? She said with a smile, but when she didn't see Yang Yang in the hall, she asked, Grandfather, where's Yang Yang? He's tired. I've asked the servants to take him to rest. The old man smiled and said, I've instructed the kitchen to make a few dishes that you like. Come and have a few drinks with us before returning to the courtyard to rest. When Feng Xiao heard the old man's words, he frowned in disapproval and said, Father, Qingji just came back. She must be exhausted. If she wants to drink, let her rest first, right? Look at her. She's lost so much weight after going out. She must have suffered a lot outside and didn't rest well. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and said, It's fine. I won't. Before he could finish, he was interrupted. Chapter 291. Seeing this, the old man stroked his beard and laughed as he waved his hand. Ha ha ha, all right, we'll do as you say. Go, little Feng. Have a good rest. Tonight, you must accompany your grandfather for a few drinks. All right, then I'll go back and rest. She chuckled and took 2 steps before stopping. She turned back to look at them and walked back with a smile. You haven't given me the present yet. Child, why did you bring us a present when you went out for training? Feng Xiao shook his head and smiled. He felt that it was good enough that she came back safely and did not care much about the present. However, when he saw what she took out, his eyes widened in disbelief. This is the red jade coral. Where did you get this? In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Looking at the precious red jade coral in front of him, he only felt that this present was too good. One had to know that this thing was a priceless item. Aside from being an ornamental item, it could also be used for cultivation. Even in the imperial family, he had only seen such a small pot, but his daughter had brought back such a large pot for him. Just thinking about it made him excited. Feng Jiu smiled and squinted his eyes. Father, this is for you. As he spoke, he looked at his grandfather who was smiling at the side and took out a wine gourd and handed it to him. Grandfather, this is the spiritual wine that I specially brought back for you. I've tasted it. The taste is mellow and the aftertaste is endless. Moreover, this wine gourd is a treasure that can hold 500 kilograms of wine. In the future, if you want to drink wine, you don't have to worry about not having enough. Ha 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 ha, good. Little Feng still has my heart. You know that my favorite thing is wine. The old man happily took the wine gourd and could not wait to open the lid of the gourd to smell the wine. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes slightly with an intoxicated expression. It's so fragrant. And it has such rich spiritual energy. Even in the entire country of Glorious Sun, you can't find such good wine. Really? Let me try a sip. When Feng Xiao heard this, he went forward. Unexpectedly, The old man hugged the gourd in his arms and waved him away. Go, go, go. My good granddaughter brought this back for me. You also have that gift. Don't think about it. Fengjiu's eyes softened as she watched the two of them laughing and joking around. This kind of family was really good. It was simple and warm. Although the population was small, everyone valued kinship. She had not experienced the kinship in her previous life, but she had all of it here. Brother, this is for you. She smiled as she took out the 8 trigrams plate and handed it to him. Guan Shalin was slightly taken aback and said in surprise, I get a gift too? Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle. Of course, you're also part of my family. Grandfather and father both have a share, so how could you not have one? She smiled as she looked at the item in his hand. She didn't know what it was, so she said, this is an 8 trigrams plate. It's a transcendent artifact. It can be used to fly, and it can also be used to fight enemies. Hearing her words, Guan Shalin picked up the 8 trigrams plate and played with it. His face was filled with joy. Then I'll be returning to my courtyard first. She smiled as she spoke. Only then did she walk into her courtyard. When evening came, Leng Shuang and Leng Hua both returned. Dinner was being prepared in the manor. The servants coming and going busily made the entire Feng manor seem very lively. Chapter 292. All right. Leng Hua replied and headed towards the backyard when she saw her master walking out with a yawn. Seeing this, she called out, Master. Millimeter Fengjiu replied. She had just woken up and was still a little sleepy, so she appeared to be very lazy. Master. Leng Hua couldn't help but smile when he saw her and called out to her. Fengjiu's gaze swept over him and smiled, looks like your body has become much stronger. I practice Tai Chi every morning and night, so my body is already very good. Leng Hua said happily. That's good. She nodded and walked towards the old man who couldn't help but start drinking. She smiled and said, Grandfather, aren't you afraid of getting drunk? This wine has a very strong recoil, so you can't drink too much at once. Ha ha ha, it's fine, it's fine. I can hold my liquor well. The old man laughed and took another sip of wine. He waved his hand and called out, since everyone is here, let the servants serve the dishes. Come, come, everyone, come and sit. Big Sister Feng. Yang Yang ran over and hugged her leg, his face full of joy. Big Sister Feng's house is really beautiful. Uncle Feng even took Yang Yang to see the fish. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled and stroked the little guy's head. It's good that you like it. You have to be obedient here, understand? Yes, yes, Yang Yang will be obedient. He nodded his head heavily and replied in a crisp voice. That night, the whole family gathered together happily, eating and chatting. It wasn't until the night gradually darkened that they all dispersed, somewhat tipsy. 2 days later the news of Murong Yixuan and Feng Qingge's engagement being annulled spread throughout Yunyu City. Once the news spread, some people rejoiced in their misfortune while others clapped their hands and cheered. It could be said that most people didn't think highly of their engagement. Now that the engagement was annulled, everyone was secretly happy. After all, from their point of view, Feng Qingge wasn't worthy of a genius like the third prince. For a man like him, the power behind the woman by his side and her own strength must be extremely outstanding. Otherwise, looks alone would be useless. Everyone felt that Feng Qingge wasn't worthy of Murong Yixuan. Only the people of Feng Manor felt that Murong Yixuan wasn't worthy of Feng Qingge. Thus, when the commoners outside were discussing this, the guards and servants in Feng Manor were all indignant. From their point of view, the eldest young miss was stronger than anyone else. More than anyone else. Feng Ju, who was in the courtyard, didn't take this matter to heart. She only needed to know that the engagement was cancelled. At this time, all her thoughts were on the book in her hand. She had carefully studied it for 2 days. There were also some elixirs in her space. Now, she just needed to start learning from the simplest alchemy. If she wanted to break through to the foundation establishment stage, she needed a foundation establishment pill. It was too impractical to buy one. Not to mention that it was difficult to find a foundation establishment pill in the country of Glorious Sun. Even if there was one, She felt that it wouldn't be as reassuring as one that she refined herself. Moreover, in the book her master had given her, there was a mention of a perfect foundation. It was a foundation that was 1 in 10,000. If she could achieve a perfect foundation, then she would have a good foundation for entering the golden core stage or even the nascent soul stage. Chapter 293. Feng Xiao walked in and saw her reading in the courtyard. A loving and doting smile appeared on his dignified face. "What are you reading? Why are you reading so seriously, father?" She closed the book and stood up. She smiled slyly at him. "I'm just researching something new." So mysterious. "All right, father won't ask. I just came to see you and tell you that the small courtyard you wanted has been cleared out. Also, what are you going to do with that courtyard? Do you need to add something to it?" "No need, it's fine as long as it's empty." She smiled and said, "I'll be busy for a while. I'll have to trouble father to take care of Yang Yang." "Don't worry, that child is very obedient. I've hired someone to teach him how to read and write. After a while, I'll teach him the horse stance to build the foundation. Let's go. Father will accompany you to see the courtyard. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, I'll have someone tear it down." "All right." She smiled and walked out with him. When the two of them walked to the rockery in the residence, they heard laughter from afar. Looking up, they saw the snow-white but chubby Laro Bai playing with several servant girls. Seeing this scene, Feng Xiao smiled and said, "Old Bai originally asked the servants to tie it up in the stable, but who knew that it couldn't stay there? These 2 days, I asked someone to untie it and let it wander around the mansion by itself." Looking at Laro Bai, who was lying on the ground with its 4 paws in the air and allowing the maidservants to stroke its belly, he shook his head and said with a smile, "You don't say, this Laro Bai is extremely intelligent. I see that it likes to get close to the maidservants when it has nothing to do, but it also looks down on the guards. It's really strange." Even the old master said that he has never seen a dragon horse like Laro Bai. Feng Jiu glanced at Laro Bai, who was lying on all 4s with its belly exposed. He was speechless. Laro Bai is such a pervert. When I met him, no matter how much his previous owner tried to pull him away, he wouldn't leave. Who knew that once he met me, he would immediately come over and chase me all the way. Later, his previous owner said that he would give him to me. As the two approached, the maidservants hurriedly stood up and respectfully bowed. They called out in a low voice, "Master, Miss Hiss." White stood up from the ground and was about to approach Fengjiu, but he was stopped by Feng Xiao. Hey, you dragon horse, don't try to get close to my daughter." Fengjiu, who was standing at the back, could not help but chuckle when he saw his father's sturdy body blocking Laro Bai from approaching. "Father, you should stop here. I can go to the courtyard by myself." She walked out from the back, and when she passed by Laro Bai, she glanced at the fat Laro Bai. She turned around with a smile and said, "Laro Bai, don't let him eat too much. He needs to lose some weight. Don't worry about that. Leave it to me. I'll take him out for a few laps later." Feng Xiao laughed loudly and indicated for her to leave. He stayed behind and led Laro Bai to the other side. After Feng Jiu arrived at the courtyard, he took out the alchemy cauldron and some elixirs that he had swindled from the Yama Lord. He wanted to start with the simplest and most common elixirs. He stayed in the courtyard for 4 to 6 hours. Chapter 294. They saw a cloud of smoke rising from one of the courtyards, accompanied by an unpleasant burnt smell. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. That seems to be the courtyard that Eldest Miss ordered people to clear out. Eldest Miss went in this morning and hasn't come out yet. Heavens! Could something have happened to her? Thinking of this, the maidservants and guards all ran towards the courtyard, afraid that something had happened to their eldest miss. What's going on? What happened? Old Master Feng also ran out when he heard the commotion. He looked around and when he saw smoke rising from one of the courtyards, he was even more stunned. What's going on over there? Old Master, that's the courtyard that Eldest Miss ordered people to clear out. Eldest Miss went in this morning and hasn't come out yet. The loud noise just now came from that courtyard. It seems like something exploded. The steward who ran over hurriedly explained. Just as he finished speaking, he saw the old master holding his robe with one hand and running towards the courtyard as if he was flying. Seeing this, he was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly followed. When everyone hurriedly arrived at the courtyard and saw the scene inside through the courtyard door, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. They saw their beautiful eldest miss sitting on the ground with her body completely black and dirty. The original color of the casual clothes she wore in the residence could no longer be seen. Her ink-black hair was splattered with black powders and medicinal dregs. It seemed that the ends of her hair were slightly curled due to the high temperature. Her face was also black and white. She looked extremely miserable as she sat on the ground and coughed. Waves of smoke rose from the room in front of her. What's going on? Everyone stared blankly. Someone recovered first and shouted, "Eldest miss, are you all right?" Cough cough, cough cough cough. Fengjiu, who had been ejected, sat on the ground. She waved away the smoke from the room in front of her with one hand while covering her nose and mouth as she coughed. She slowly stood up and turned around to see many people outside the courtyard. She waved her hand at them. "I'm fine. You don't have to crowd around there. Go do what you need to do." After saying this, she walked towards the pill room that was emitting scorched smoke. The first time she refined pills, the lid directly exploded. The air in the alchemy furnace, along with the dozens of elixirs she used, spurted out. Even she couldn't avoid it in time and was ejected by the air, causing her to be dirty and messy. She opened the window to let the smoke disperse. When she saw the scattered medicinal dregs on the ground, her face filled with pain. What a waste. It's a lot of money to buy them. Fenglas, are you all right? The old man, who had rushed over from outside, entered the courtyard and headed towards the pill room. The housekeeper stood guard at the entrance of the courtyard, while the others had already dispersed. When she turned around and saw him, she rubbed her nose and said with a smile, "Grandpa, I'm fine. I just wasted a furnace of good medicine." Fengjiu s Fengjiu of the eldest of Fengjiu, the of Fengjiu ss Fengjiu TTTTSTT of A. I'm learning. See, this furnace is ruined. She helplessly shrugged. It's easy to talk about it on paper, but it's difficult to implement it. Chapter 295. Yes, I can definitely do it. She smiled slyly and said, "But grandfather, no one is allowed to enter my courtyard. Go back and tell the servants that even if it's my father, it's best not to let him in." "Haha, all right, that's not a problem. Your father took Old White out for a stroll and isn't in the estate right now. If he were here, he would have rushed over already." He smiled and looked at the chaotic pill room. He asked, "Do you want someone to come and help you? When Lung Shuang comes back, she can come over." "All right then. Be careful, don't hurt yourself," he said worriedly. "Yes, I will." Her heart warmed. After sending him out, she returned to the pill room to tidy up and reorganize the reasons for her previous failure. After a long time, she stood in front of the pill furnace and used the spiritual power in her body to ignite the flames under the furnace. After the flames flew to the bottom of the furnace, she retracted her hand and controlled the strength of the flames under the furnace while paying attention to the temperature of the pill furnace. The first batch was fine at the beginning, but there was a problem at the end when the pills were condensed. It was probably because she didn't control the flames and spiritual power well. After her first failure, no matter how carefully she thought about this cauldron, she did not dare to be careless. However, after about 4 hours, the cauldron began to vibrate. She was slightly stunned when she saw it, and in the next moment, she broke into a run. Bang! Smoke filled the courtyard again. This time, the people in the estate were only stunned for a moment before continuing to do their own things. This was because the old master had said that they didn't need to care about the eldest Mrs. Courtyard and didn't need to look. However, they were still curious. What was the eldest miss doing in there? Why was there another explosion? As for the pill room, Fengjiu was really going all out. She rested in the courtyard for a while and watched the smoke dissipate. Then, she walked in again. This time, even the pill furnace fell down. Seeing this, the corner of her mouth twitched. It was a good thing that the things she used to trick the Yama Lord were all first class. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed long ago. This competition lasted until evening. However, an entire day had passed and she hadn't been able to refine a single pill. Moreover, she had wasted a lot of spiritual herbs, so she didn't have enough left in her space. When Leng Shuang, who had just returned to the mansion, heard a loud bang, her footsteps paused slightly. Seeing that the guards and maidservants in the mansion were all used to it, she looked towards the remote courtyard and thought to herself, it should be Master refining elixirs, right? When he arrived outside the courtyard, he saw his master coughing from the smoke. He called out, "Master, I'm back." She went to the black market today but was delayed by something. Leng Shuang. It's good that you're back. She walked up to the door of the courtyard, took out a prescription and a crystal card, and handed them to her. Go to the black market and buy me 20 portions of each of the spiritual herbs listed here. I want 30 portions of the scarlet grass on the top. There's money inside, take it and buy it. Yes. Leng Shuang didn't ask any more questions. He took it and quickly went to the black market again. What no one expected was that she was so focused on refining pills. She failed again and again, but tried again and again. She didn't give up, only stubbornness. She only thought that she didn't believe that she couldn't refine a batch of high-quality pills. Chapter 296. Father, do you think that child, Chinga, has been inside for 3 days and 3 nights? Could something have happened to her? Why don't I go in and take a look? Feng Xiao said worriedly. He, who was standing outside the courtyard, was stopped from entering. Therefore, he did not know what the situation in the room was like. Master Feng glanced at him and said, "Can't you see that I'm also standing here and waiting?" Little Feng said that no one is to go in and disturb her. She will come out when she wants to. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Although he said that, his eyes kept glancing at the courtyard from time to time. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't worried or anxious. It had been 3 days and 3 nights. That girl didn't go back to rest except when Leng Shuang brought her food. How could she endure like this? After thinking for a while, he looked at Leng Shuang, who was standing guard in the courtyard, and said, "Go and see if she wants to come out." However, Leng Shuang didn't move and said, "Master ordered me to stand guard here. I can't disturb her unless she calls me." After a pause, she said, "Old master, you should go back first. I'm here to guard this place. Nothing will happen." "Ah, all right then. If anything happens, you must let us know." Old Master Feng said and turned to walk back. However, he saw that Feng Xiao was still standing there and said, "Let's go." "What are you standing there for? You're poor in your own home. What are you worried about?" Feng Xiao looked at him speechlessly and thought to herself, "He's obviously worried too, but he's still talking about me." However, she didn't continue to stand guard outside the courtyard and left with Master Feng. After watching the two leave, Leng Shuang withdrew her gaze and quietly stood guard, not allowing anyone to come close. After about 2 hours, she smelled a strong medicinal fragrance in the air. She couldn't help but be surprised and looked towards the pill room. "Master, you've succeeded. If it was a concoction of medicine, the smell would not be so rich and fragrant. Moreover, the smell of the medicine made people feel refreshed, as if all the exhaustion in their body had disappeared. They were really curious, what was the effect of the medicine that Master had refined? However, at this time, in the elixir room, Feng Jiu, who was dirty and had sweat on her forehead, held her breath and controlled the last flame to condense the pill. Although she smelled the fragrance of Chinese medicine in the air, she did not dare to be careless. It wasn't until the final step of condensing the pill that she heaved a sigh of relief. However, she was startled by a sudden bolt of lightning that fell from the sky. Boom! The first bolt of lightning struck down from the sky with a loud rumble. It penetrated the house and struck the pill furnace. She was so shocked that she immediately retreated. Her eyes widened in astonishment and shock. This is Dan Cheng attracting lightning? She was shocked and astonished. She raised her head in disbelief to look at the hole in the roof. Through the hole, she could see the clouds in the clear sky and the rumbling of thunder. "Oh no! Thunder in the middle of the day, with such a big commotion, it will definitely alarm everyone, she muttered, her mind working quickly. Boom. When the second bolt of lightning struck, it was just as Fengjiu had said. The sudden thunder in the middle of the day alarmed all the factions in Yunyu City. Even the monarch in the imperial palace was alarmed. No one sent anyone to investigate. Instead, they all moved out and rushed towards the source of the lightning. When Master Feng in the Feng Manor heard the sound of the lightning, his expression changed greatly. He could be considered an experienced old man and naturally knew how big of a matter it was to attract lightning. Chapter 297. Feng Xiao, who had heard the commotion in the manor, naturally knew that something big had happened in the manor. Also, he figured that it had something to do with the things his daughter had been fiddling with over the past few days. Thus, when he heard the old man's loud shout, his powerful voice filled with Shenqi was also heard. Feng Manor's guards, listen to my orders. Guard the Feng Manor. Don't let a single fly in. The hearts of the guards that had rushed out of the manor trembled. They immediately prepared themselves for battle and replied in a deep voice, yes. The sonorous and powerful voice filled with battle intent rang out in the various courtyards of the Feng Manor. Some of these guards were originally standing guard in the courtyards, some were standing guard in the corridors, some were standing guard in the rockery, and some were hidden in the shadows. However, when they heard the old man and Feng Xiao's voices, they were like blood-soaked soldiers that had heard a military order. They quickly rushed to the walls of the Feng Manor's courtyards to prevent anyone from breaking in. The servants of the manor had been ordered by the housekeeper to stand guard in the courtyards. They looked at the dark clouds in the sky above the courtyard with shock and uncertainty, as well as the sudden clap of thunder. Their hearts were filled with shock. Thunder on a sunny day. They had actually seen such a strange thing. Also, it seemed to be related to their eldest young miss. Chiu, who had been lazily lying on the rockery and basking in the warm morning sun, could not help but sit up straight when he saw the sudden clap of thunder in the sky. His sharp and bloodthirsty eyes were filled with shock, and he immediately ran towards the courtyard. Attracting heavenly lightning in the middle of the day? What was that woman doing? Not only did Chiu run over, even old Bai, who had been trying to hide under the servant girl's skirt, raised his head slightly and glanced at the sky. He sniffed with his nose and also ran towards the courtyard. Boom! Following the third bolt of heavenly lightning, the dark clouds in the sky scattered. The Feng Manor seemed to have regained its calm in an instant, but everyone knew that a problem had arisen. That was because the people that had rushed over from all directions had arrived outside the Feng Manor's gates. They were either shocked, startled, surprised, or incredulous as they looked at the tightly shut gates of the Feng Manor. Thunder on a clear day, and 3 bolts of lightning at that. What exactly happened in the Feng Manor? Everyone wanted to know, but the Feng Manor was not a normal family. The Feng Manor's gates were tightly shut. Even if they were curious, they did not dare and could not enter without the master's permission. What do you think happened in the Feng Manor? Why would it attract heavenly lightning? Who knows? The Feng Manor's gates are tightly shut. Who dares to knock on the door at this time? I'm afraid people won't say anything even if I knock. But I'm really curious. What exactly happened? Look, isn't that the monarch? He actually came in person. One of the patriarchs exclaimed in a low voice, gesturing for everyone to look at the figure that was flying towards them. Another family head pondered and said, even the king personally came. It can be seen that this matter is not trivial. I think the Feng family's door will definitely open. Yuan, that's right. It's just that we cannot enter the Feng Manor, but the king will definitely be able to enter. In the midst of everyone's whispers, the king, Murongbo, stepped onto the roof of a restaurant, but he could only vaguely see the roof of the Feng Manor's courtyard. He could not see the situation inside, but he was certain that the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning had indeed been attracted by the Feng Manor. Chapter 298. Who is knocking on the door? A low and dignified voice came from inside the door. That was Feng Xiao's voice. It was firm and dignified. Feng Xiao, open the door. Murongbo's deep and dignified voice also came from outside. His voice carried the aura of an expert, and the tone of his voice was one of command. Hearing the voice from outside, Feng Xiao, who was holding a large blade and sitting calmly inside the door, slightly furrowed his brow. His dignified face sank, and he hesitated for a moment. His firm voice carried an apologetic tone. "Country lord, please forgive this official for not being able to obey." When Murongbo heard this, his brow slightly furrowed. He was a bit angry from the humiliation. He, the dignified ruler of a country, had personally come, yet he was refused entry. Not only was Murongbo angry from the humiliation, even the people not far away who had not come forward were stunned. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that Feng Xiao would dare to refuse the country lord? Wasn't this too daring? It had to be known that the Feng manor was not the same as the other families. Aside from being the head of the Feng manor, Feng Xiao was also the mighty general of the country of Glorious Sunday. He was Murongbo's subordinate. Refusing to obey an order could be a big or small matter. "Feng Xiao, do you know what you are saying?" Murongbo's face sank, and his voice carried a bit of coldness and anger. Just as the atmosphere outside the Feng manor's door was tense and dangerous, Fengzhou opened the pill furnace in the pill room. Seeing the 3 brownish-red pills inside, she revealed a happy and excited smile. She had succeeded. Without anyone to guide her, she relied on her experience and understanding of medicine. She relied on the simple steps in the book to figure out the method of refining the pills. After spending 3 days and 3 nights and wasting quite a few spirit medicines, she had finally succeeded. She took out the 3 pills and placed them on the table to the side to observe. She saw that the pills were filled with spiritual energy, and 5 pill markings appeared on the small pills. They were clearly visible. It really is 5 pill markings. No wonder it could attract heavenly lightning to temper the pills. As she spoke, she was pleasantly surprised as she looked at the pill veins on the pill. He didn't expect that the first batch of pills he refined would be of such a high grade. According to the records in the book, only pills with 5 pill patterns or more could attract heavenly lightning. Not to mention that this was in the Tier 9 country of Glorious Sun. Even in the Tier 6 country of Greentang, it was extremely difficult to find a pill with 5 patterns. "This is great. After wasting so many spiritual herbs, I finally won't suffer a loss." She chuckled and took out a bottle. She put the 3 pills into 3 separate bottles and put them into her space. Then, she put away the pill furnace and walked out of the pill room. The Feng family patriarch, who was standing guard outside the courtyard, saw her come out and immediately asked, "Feng girl? Have you finished concocting that pill of yours? Those 3 bolts of lightning have alarmed everyone. Even the monarch has come running. Your father is guarding the gate, but I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long." Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes flashed. He walked towards the old man and said to Lung Shuang, "Clean up the place." "Yes." Lung Shuang complied, then walked towards the pill room. "Grandfather, it's fine. There's no need to worry. With our Feng manor's reputation, no one dares to force their way in." Chapter 299. Hearing this, the old man's eyes lit up. He was so excited that even his voice began to tremble. "I heard that only pills with 5 pill patterns or more can attract the heavenly lightning. Could it be that your pill has 5 pill patterns?" "Yuan, it is a 5 pill pattern fortune pill," she replied with a slight smile. Looking at the excited expression on his face, she said, "Grandfather, go ahead and take a look. I will go back to take a bath and change my clothes. Tell the servants to be strict. Even if the country's lord asks, they are not to say anything." Although the old man did not know what effects the fortune pill had, his heart was currently filled with joy. "You are correct. Based on our Feng manor's prestige, outsiders will not dare to barge in. Even if it is the country's lord, he would not be able to lower himself to barge into an official's home. You should go change first. Grandfather will go ahead and take a look at the situation." He hurriedly said this. After adjusting his expression, he walked towards the front yard. Seeing this, Fengzhou also walked towards the front yard and ordered people to prepare water for a bath. At this time, in front of the Feng manor's main gate, Murongbo's anger had already reached its peak. He had thought of kicking open the Feng Manor's main gate or jumping over the wall to get in, but his status and pride did not allow him to do such a thing that was beneath his status. However, he could not swallow this anger. Because of this, the atmosphere became extremely tense. At this time, the front door that had been tightly shut opened with a creak. Old Master Feng came out with a smile and a bit of an apologetic expression. As for the stern-faced Feng Xiao, he followed behind him with his head lowered. It was as if he had been scolded. "Ah, it's all this old man's fault." This old man had Feng Xiao guard the front door and not let anyone in. "I really did not think that even the country's lord would be alarmed. I even refused to let the country's lord in. I truly was disrespectful." Old Master Feng repeatedly cupped his hands and apologized. As he spoke, he walked over to the country's lord. "Country's lord, please come in." Old Master Feng gestured for him to enter and stepped to the side to allow him to enter. Murongbo glanced at Feng Xiao with a gloomy face. He flicked his sleeves and snorted heavily before walking in. Not far away, everyone had different expressions when they saw this scene. Someone rushed forward and called out to Old Master Feng, who was about to step in. "Old Master, please wait." The old man turned around and looked at the two middle-aged men behind him. Seeing that they were the two clan leaders of the big clans in Yunyu City, he smiled and asked, "What's the matter, clan leaders?" Hearing this, the two of them cursed inwardly. Isn't this asking the obvious? How could he not know what they were up to? Even though this was the case, there was not the slightest trace of a smile on his face as he said, "It's like this. We saw 3 bolts of heavenly lightning fall in the Feng Manor's courtyard. I wonder what attracted the heavenly lightning. Old Master, can you satisfy our curiosity?" Old Master Feng stopped and stroked his beard as he looked at the two. His gaze swept past the people who had not come up but were waiting for an answer. He revealed a smile. One sentence was enough to make them choke. As the saying goes, curiosity kills the cat. The two of you are not young anymore. It's best if you don't be curious about things. Seeing Old Master Feng turn and walk in, the two clan leaders' faces turned red. They silently stared at the slowly closing Feng Manor's front door for a long time. Chapter 300. But thinking about it, how could the Feng Manor's position be lower than any of the aristocratic families in Yunyu City? Thinking of the power behind the Feng Manor, the two who were originally a bit angry felt relieved. Even the king had been refused entry earlier, so what could they do? Since the king had gone in, they should know very quickly what had attracted the heavenly lightning. Thus, there was no need to rush. At this time, in the Feng Manor's main hall, the king sat in the main seat with a dark expression. Although he did not say anything, it was clear that he still had a belly full of anger. "King, please drink some tea." After the servant brought the tea and left, the old man gestured for him to sit down. As for Feng Xiao, he stood at his side with his head slightly lowered. Murongbo glanced at the two and his expression relaxed. He picked up a teacup with one hand and used the other to gently scrape the tea leaves. After taking a sip, he said in a deep voice, "Speak. What was the matter with the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning?" However, after he asked this, he was met with silence. While drinking the tea, he frowned and looked at Old Master Feng. His eyes were filled with displeasure. "What? You can't say?" Old Master Feng sighed and said apologetically, "King, I really can't say this because this old man doesn't know how to say it." Hearing this, Murongbo's originally relaxed expression sank again. His sharp and oppressive gaze swept over Old Master Feng and Feng Xiao. "Could it be that you think something that could attract the heavenly lightning is a small matter? Even if martial cultivators want to attract the heavenly lightning, they can only do so when their strength reaches the level of a martial emperor. Now that the Feng Manor has attracted 3 bolts of heavenly lightning, all of Yunyu City has been alarmed. Could it be that you don't owe this lord an explanation? I wonder what kind of explanation the king wants." A gentle voice with a bit of carelessness was heard, easing the oppressive atmosphere in the hall. Murongbo looked in the direction of the voice and saw Feng Qingge, who was dressed in white, walking in with graceful steps. She had an elegant aura and a pitilessly beautiful face. It was no wonder that his most outstanding son had fallen for her. When old Master Feng saw her, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he sat there with half-closed eyes and sipped his tea. He seemed to have completely let her handle the situation. Seeing this, Feng Xiao moved his lips but did not say anything. He pretended to be dead just like the old man. Feng Jiu slowly walked into the hall. When he arrived at the center of the hall, he bowed slightly and then stood there quietly looking at Murongbo, who had occupied the master's seat. Perhaps it was because they had been in power for a long time and had become accustomed to being in charge. They were accustomed to using a commanding tone to give orders, just like the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning that she had attracted. If it was anyone else, they would not dare to ask. After all, this was a matter of the Feng manor. If they did not say anything, who could do anything to them? After Murongbo heard her words, he furrowed his brow and said in a heavy voice, "What do you mean by this? This lord has come because of the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. You just need to tell this lord the truth about the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. What's with all this nonsense?" Chapter 301. Hearing this, Murongbo's sharp gaze coldly swept over her. Turning to look at Feng Xiao, he shouted in a deep voice, "Feng Xiao." This shout of Feng Xiao contained the pressure of a strong person and the aura of a superior. Almost as soon as his voice came out, a profound aura visible to the naked eye filled the hall. It was extremely stifling, and it also caused Feng Xiao, who had been doing his best to reduce his presence, to finally walk out. This official is present. Murongbo could not get angry at old Master Feng because that was the Feng manor's old master. Even if he was the ruler of a country, he still had to respect the teachings of his ancestors because old Master Feng was an elder from his father's generation. Even if he got angry, he could not direct it at him. As for Feng Qingji, she was only Feng Xiao's daughter and the Feng manor's eldest young miss. First, she was not his official. Second, she was not his daughter-in-law. Adding on the fact that she was from the younger generation, rather than getting angry at her, it would be better to directly question Feng Xiao. He glanced at Feng Xiao, who was respectfully bowing, and directly asked, "What is going on with these 3 bolts of heavenly lightning?" This. Feng Xiao raised his head and glanced at Murongbo. He shook his head with a blank expression. This official also does not know what is going on. He really did not know. When he had heard the heavenly lightning, he had run out of the courtyard and heard the old man's orders. How could he know what was going on with the heavenly lightning? However, this was still his family's matter, and it could not be separated from his precious daughter. Thus, even if he knew, he had to say that he did not know. When the already angry Murongbo heard this, he immediately slammed the teacup in his hand onto the table. He stood up and left with a gloomy expression without saying a single word. His sudden action caused the 3 people in the hall to be slightly surprised, but they did not say anything. They only watched him leave. "Qingji, what exactly is going on? What exactly were you doing in that room? Why would it attract heavenly thunder?" Feng Xiao asked. He had some guesses in his heart, but he wasn't sure. There were only 3 situations that could attract heavenly lightning. The first was a treasure falling from the sky, the second was a breakthrough in cultivation, and the third was a rare pill. However, all 3 of these situations were inconceivable to him. Therefore, he was at a loss. "Lung Shuang, guard the door and don't let anyone get close," Feng Jiu ordered. "Yes." The Lung Shuang outside responded and stood guard at the door. Seeing this, Feng Xiao could not help but feel nervous. Looking at his daughter who had a happy smile on her face, he only felt that a thought in his heart was about to be confirmed. He was a little nervous and a little excited. "Grandfather, father, please take a seat." She gestured and pulled Feng Xiao, who was still in a daze, to a seat. Then, she moved a chair to sit between the 2 of them. She then took out a bottle from her space and poured a pill into her palm. "Look, this is the nature pill. It has 5 elixir veins. It attracted the 3 heavenly thunder." The old man had lived for a long time, but this was the first time he saw a pill with 5 elixir veins. Moreover, it was refined by his granddaughter. At this moment, he could only feel the blood in his body boiling. He was so excited that his face flushed red and his hands trembled. Good, good, good. Little Feng, you've made grandfather proud. Compared to the old man who could still speak, Feng Xiao was completely stunned. His eyes were wide open and he could only feel the blood rushing to his brain. In the next moment, he fainted because he was too excited. Chapter 302. Old Master Feng laughed and scolded, "What a good-for-nothing." Feng Jiu was stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh. He shouted, "Lung Shuang, call 2 people in to help my father back to rest." Lung Shuang, who was outside, responded. She then called 2 guards in and helped Feng Xiao back to the courtyard. In the hall, Feng Jiu handed the bottle of fate pill to the old master. He smiled and said, "Grandpa, this fate pill is for you." "For me." The old master was slightly stunned, and then he waved his hand. "How can this be? You haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights because of this pill, and you must have destroyed a lot of herbs. You should keep this for yourself. I'm already so old, and this pill is useless to me." "Who said it's useless?" She smiled slyly and said, "Grandpa, you still don't know the effect of this fate pill." She paused and said, "Do you know that a fate pill can remove the impurities left in the body over the years, refine the muscles and bones, and expand the tendons and meridians? Not only that, because the impurities in the body are removed, the bones and meridians will be refined, and the speed of practice will be greatly improved within 2 months. Moreover, Grandpa is now a martial arts grandmaster at stage 8 of the initial stage of the Black Realm. If you take the fate pill, I believe you can break through the threshold of the initial stage of the martial arts grandmaster realm and enter the peak stage in 2 months." Hearing this, the old master's eyes widened in disbelief. He said in surprise, This fate pill really has such a magical effect." "Of course, this little pill is made with more than a dozen precious spiritual herbs, and it's a pill with 5 elixir veins. Of course it has such an effect." She smiled and put the bottle in his hand. She said, "Besides, if you don't believe me, why don't you try it? But you worked so hard to refine this one. If you give it to Grandpa, won't it be?" Hearing this, she moved closer to him and mysteriously said, "Grandpa, I'll tell you a secret. I've refined 3 pills. When I get back, I'll give one to Father. The remaining one will be auctioned off in the black market. When the time comes, I'll buy more spiritual herbs and refine more pills." Hearing this, the old man smiled happily and replied, Okay. Grandpa will accept it." Looking at his granddaughter who was getting more and more capable, he said with gratification, "Little Feng, you're getting more and more amazing. If people knew that she could actually refine a revival pill with 5 pill veins, it would definitely cause 1,000 ripples. She was still so young and didn't know the dangers of the world. If someone with ulterior motives found out and wanted to kill her in the cradle, then, thinking of this, the smile on his face disappeared. He said seriously, "Little Feng, you should know that hiding your strength is better to protect yourself than showing off. You can only trust some of the people you meet. You're still young and already have the reputation of the ghost doctor. If you take out this fate pill with 5 spiritual breaths, it's hard to guarantee that the power behind the black market won't have any evil intentions. Therefore, I suggest that you don't show this fate pill to the world. If you really want to show it, you can't do it in a small 9th-class country like Yaori. Otherwise, I'm afraid that once this pill appears, trouble will follow." Chapter 303. How could the old man not understand the hidden meaning behind her words? Since ancient times, what the emperor dislikes the most are officials whose achievements overshadow the emperor's. Moreover, it's a power like our Feng manor. After today's matter, I fear that our Feng family will not be the slightest bit dissatisfied with the emperor. This sort of blatant disregard of the emperor's orders had definitely left a thorn in Murongbo's heart. However, there was nothing they could do about today's matter. If they reported the truth and let him know that the phone girl was the ghost doctor and was also a pill refiner, perhaps the phone girl would definitely be controlled by Murongbo and become the imperial family's pill refiner. After all, as the head of a clan, he was very clear that for those in power, if they knew that such a pill refiner existed, they would definitely pull her into their clan and work for them. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. It was because he deeply understood this principle that when he saw the 3 bolts of lightning, he ordered Feng Xiao to guard the gate. Whoever dared to force their way in was to be killed without mercy. This was because he was very clear that if others knew that his granddaughter could refine pills, even the Feng family would not be able to protect her. It was also because of this that when he found out about her outstanding talent, he only wanted to think of a way to hide this shocking talent of hers. Before she became strong enough, they would do their best to protect her, so that she could conserve her energy and be in the best condition for the day when she shone brightly. And as they had guessed, Murongbo, who had returned to the palace, could not hide the anger in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he swept the things on the table to the ground. With a gloomy expression, he sat down. A murderous intent flashed through his cold eyes. It was so fast that no one could detect it. What exactly was the Feng manor hiding? There were only a few possibilities that could attract 3 bolts of lightning, but no matter which one it was, he could not accept it. The current Feng manor's power was already too great, especially the Feng guards. They were already more than enough to surpass the imperial family's imperial guards. This sort of power, if used well, would be a sharp sword against the enemy. If used poorly, the sharp blade would be directed at him. The matter of the 3 bolts of lightning seemed to have passed by peacefully. However, that was not the case. Although nobody went to the Feng manor to inquire about the matter, they continued to think about it. Even the citizens on the streets would talk about the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning during the day. It was just that although this topic was discussed in low voices, nobody brought it up again. It was as if they had purposely covered it up and ignored it. Even Murongbo didn't send anyone to inquire about it during this period of time, nor did he summon Feng Xiao. As for Murong Yixian, he had been cultivating in seclusion ever since his engagement with Feng Ju was annulled, so he didn't hear about this matter. This, Murongbo. Chapter 304. When Feng Xiao rushed to the imperial palace, he was stopped before he could even enter the imperial palace. General Feng, the monarch has given orders. The imperial edict will be sent to the Feng manor in a moment. General Feng, please return. 8 imperial guards blocked Feng Xiao's steps, not allowing him to enter the imperial palace. Bullshit. Anger attacked his heart and he even cursed. His imposing tiger eyes angrily glared at the 8 imperial guards blocking his way. He shouted in a deep voice, "Get out of my way. I want to enter the imperial palace to see the monarch." The 8 people couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, "General Feng, please don't make things difficult for us. The monarch ordered us to wait here for General Feng because he doesn't want to see you. If you force your way in, I'm afraid that our heads will roll in the end." With their strength, it was impossible for them to stop Feng Xiao. However, the monarch had ordered them to guard this place and not let Feng Xiao enter because of this. If they let Feng Xiao in, they would have to pay with their lives. Damn it! Feng Xiao was furious. Seeing that the imperial palace was right in front of him but he couldn't enter, this kind of grievance made him want to curse. Just as he was about to turn around and return to the manor, he saw a figure walk out from inside. He immediately shouted, "Third Prince." Murong Yixian was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Feng Xiao's voice. He raised his head and walked towards him with large strides. "Uncle Xiao, do you want to enter the imperial palace to see my lord father?" "I want to enter, but I can't." He glanced at the 8 people. Seeing this, the 8 people all lowered their heads. Murong Yixian glanced at the 8 generals and said to Feng Xiao, "Uncle Xiao, let's find a place to talk." "That's fine." Seeing that he couldn't enter the imperial palace, he could only try to get information from Murong Yixian. What did the monarch mean by this? He originally wanted to find a restaurant nearby but felt that it was inappropriate. Thus, he went to the Feng manor in the end. In the Feng manor's main hall, without waiting for Feng Xiao to speak, Murong Yixian asked, "Uncle Xiao, is Qingji home? Does she know about this?" "She's not home. She went out and hasn't returned yet." It was because his precious daughter was not home, and the father and son were both in seclusion. That was why he was the only one guarding the Feng manor. Now that something like this had happened, neither of them knew about it. Initially, he wanted to get to the bottom of this matter before they found out about it. Who knew that he couldn't even meet the monarch? Thinking of this, his stomach was filled with anger again. What's going on with your father? How can you make such a decision on your own without asking us? If Chinga finds out about this, I don't know what will happen. He's just messing around. Murong Yixuan pursed his lips and said, after I heard the news, I immediately went to the palace to try and stop it. However, I saw that my father seemed to have made up his mind. I'm afraid there's no turning back. Otherwise, he wouldn't refuse to see you. We will never agree to this. Feng Xiao stood up and said to Murong Yixuan, since I can't meet the monarch, I'll have to ask Third Prince to pass on the message. Our Feng family only has one child, Qing Ji. How can we agree to this? Murong Yixuan was deep in thought. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the voice of an imperial decree come from outside. The imperial decree has arrived. Feng Qing Ji, receive the decree. Chapter 305. Hearing this, the middle-aged Prime Minister chuckled. General Feng, why are you so angry? You have to know that this is a good thing that many people can't even wait for. That Qingtang Kingdom is a 6th-tier kingdom. To be able to have a marriage relationship with them is a good fortune that some people can't cultivate for several lifetimes. Moreover, the one who sent people to propose marriage is His Highness the Crown Prince of Qingtang Kingdom. That is the future king of Qingtang Kingdom. Even if it is only to be his concubine, it is still a supreme honor. Bullshit. My, Feng Xiao's, beloved daughter is going to be someone's concubine? Or is it a supreme honor? Since it is such a good thing, why don't you send your daughter over? Feng Xiao exploded in anger. As he was standing in front of the Prime Minister, he directly sprayed saliva on the Prime Minister's face, causing the Prime Minister's face to turn green and red. The Prime Minister wiped his face and wiped away the saliva that had splashed on his face. He secretly cursed. This Feng Xiao is a complete boorish man. He was secretly angry, but he also remembered the mission of this trip. Thus, he sternly said, this marriage is not only a matter of your Feng family, it is related to the relationship between the two kingdoms. You have to know that Qingtang Kingdom is a 6th-tier mid-tier kingdom. Its military strength is not comparable to 10 glorious Sun Kingdoms. If there is any mishap in this marriage, do you know that our glorious Sun Kingdom will be consigned to eternal damnation at any time? Then there is no reason to send my daughter to be someone's concubine. Moreover, I have already promised to let her decide on her marriage. No one can interfere. Seeing that Feng Xiao was being unreasonable, the Prime Minister thought that he had already said all the good things, but talking to this Feng Xiao was simply playing the lute to a cow. He didn't care anymore and said, since your daughter is not at home, then it is the same if you accept the imperial edict. As he spoke, he opened the imperial edict and was about to read it out. Who would have thought that his actions would anger Feng Xiao? Without saying anything, Feng Xiao stepped forward and grabbed his collar. Feng Xiao, what are you doing? Put me down. His strength was not as good as Feng Xiao's. Now, he was suddenly grabbed by the collar and lifted up. His feet were off the ground, and his neck was strangled by the collar to the point that he could not breathe. His face was also flushed red. He waved his hands and struggled, but he could not hit him. I already said that I won't accept this decree, and you still dare to announce it to me. Feng Xiao angrily cursed. Grabbing him by the collar, he dragged him out and threw him out of the Feng Manor's gates. Scram back to where you came from. If you dare to come again, I'll break your legs. Once this was said, the Feng Manor's gates were closed with a bang. All that was left were the servants that had been chased out. Feng Xiao. You brute. I will definitely report you to the monarch. Sitting on the ground, the Prime Minister's robes were wrinkled and he looked to be in an extremely sorry state. Seeing the Feng Manor's gates close with a bang, he angrily cursed with a red face. After standing up, he straightened his robes and angrily headed for the imperial palace. A few people that were secretly paying attention to the Feng Manor's movements were secretly shocked. Could it be that Feng Xiao wanted to go against the heavens? He actually dared to throw the Prime Minister out? Could it be that he wanted to refuse the imperial edict? In reality, In their eyes, being able to gain the favor of the crown prince of Qingteng country was an extremely good thing. After all, Qingteng country was not a normal country. Even if she was a secondary princess, her status was definitely different. Chapter 306. From their point of view, aside from Feng Qingji's beauty, her strength was nothing to be proud of. How could a woman that even third Prince Murong Yixuan be worthy of Qingteng country's crown prince? In Feng manner, Murong Yixuan was also a bit stunned because he didn't think that not only did Feng Xiao not accept the edict, he even threw the prime minister out. This was a blatant slap to his father emperor's face. With his father emperor's temper, he would probably fly into a rage after finding out. What great glory! My Feng family doesn't need this glory. Feng Xiao angrily returned to the hall. Seeing that Murong Yixuan was still standing in the courtyard, he said, "Third prince, you should also return. Steward, see the guest out." Perhaps it was because Murong Bo's actions made him angry, so he even felt that Murong Yixuan was an eyesore. "Uncle Xiao, wait a moment." Murong Yixuan stopped him as he was about to leave and said, "Uncle Xiao, my father emperor is the ruler of a country. Your actions today are really inappropriate." "My actions are inappropriate, but is your father emperor's actions correct? My Feng family has protected Yarrow Ri country for generations. Now, my Feng manor only has Qingji as the apple of my eye. He actually didn't even ask for our opinion and directly agreed to this marriage, sending my daughter to be someone's secondary princess. Listen carefully, a secondary princess? Who wants to be here?" Murong Yixuan also didn't feel good and said, "I think Father Emperor's actions can't be helped. After all, Qingteng country is a 6th-tier country. If they put pressure on us, our Yarrow Ri country can't withstand it. Alright, you don't need to say any more. In any case, I won't send my daughter to be someone's secondary princess." He waved his hand and didn't listen to him anymore as he walked away. "Third prince, please." The steward waiting at the side bowed and gestured for him to leave. Seeing this, Murong Yixuan walked out. When he left the hall, his footsteps paused and he turned to ask the steward, "Did your eldest miss say where she went? When will she return?" The steward smiled and said apologetically, "We servants don't know this." Hearing this, Murong Yixuan didn't ask any more and walked out of Feng Manor's door. In the Imperial Palace Bang, after listening to the Prime Minister's report, Murong Bo slammed his hand heavily on the table. He stood up angrily and shouted, "Men, capture Feng Xiao and throw him into the prison." The Prime Minister, who was standing at the side, heard this and quickly stopped him. "Your Majesty, please calm down. This is absolutely impossible. This Feng Xiao is too presumptuous. If I don't teach him a lesson, he will forget that he is still my subject." Murong Bo's face was full of anger as he said in a deep voice, he openly disobeyed orders and refused to accept the imperial edict. Just this alone is enough to punish him for the crime of disrespect. The Prime Minister sighed and said, "But my lord, this Feng Xiao is not a normal person. The entire Feng family is guarded by him. If he is caught and thrown into the imperial prison, it will definitely cause a disturbance in the Feng Manor's power. This really cannot be done. Are we going to let him off so easily? Not bickering with him? Then where will this lord's face go?" The anger in his heart was hard to quell. Thinking of how he had been rejected outside the door and how he had disobeyed the imperial edict and challenged his authority again, his patience had reached its limit. Chapter 307. Hearing this, Murong Bo began to laugh. Looking at the Prime Minister with praise, he said, "It is fortunate that you were at this lord's side to remind me. Otherwise, this lord would have definitely made a wrong decision in a fit of anger." The Prime Minister cupped his hands and smiled, saying, "To be able to share the country's worries is this official's honor." As for the other side, Fengjiu, who was refining pills in the Peach Blossom Cove, had a month of practice. She was already familiar with the steps of refining pills and was able to control the flames and spiritual energy. In the past month, she had only refined a single pill with 5 spiritual auras in the Feng Manor's inner courtyard. Because she was worried that it would attract the heavenly lightning and cause a disturbance, She had only refined pills with 5 spiritual auras and below. As for foundation establishment pills, they only appeared with 2 spiritual auras or 3 spiritual auras. There were even higher levels. However, they were considered rare goods and were rarely seen at auctions. The spiritual ingredients needed to refine foundation establishment pills were not particularly rare. On the contrary, those spiritual ingredients were rather common. However, to refine those spiritual ingredients into foundation establishment pills was not an easy matter. She had experimented in the past month. Out of 50 batches of foundation establishment pills, she had only succeeded in refining 2 batches. Furthermore, they only had 3 pill markings. 3 pill markings was not something she could use as she was preparing for a perfect foundation establishment pill. The lower the pill markings, the more poison there would be, and the medicinal effects would not be too strong. Thus, she needed foundation establishment pills with 5 pill markings or higher. Lung Shuang, who had just entered, glanced at his master refining pills in the courtyard and hesitated as to whether or not he should go forward. Putting away the blood-clotting pills he had refined into a bottle, Fengjiu did not raise her head and asked, "What is it? Is something the matter?" As she spoke, she placed the spiritual ingredients on the table into her space. She then put away the pill furnace. "Master, a piece of news has come from the city." She walked forward and said, "What news? Is it related to me?" Fengjiu raised her head and asked Lung Shuang. If it was not related to her, she figured that Lung Shuang would not be so hesitant. "It's related to Master." Lung Shuang paused for a moment before continuing. The Crown Prince of the Enchanting Kingdom sent someone to the monarch to deliver a marriage proposal, stating that he wanted to marry Master as his concubine. The monarch agreed to this marriage without the permission of Old Master and Old Master. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. "The Crown Prince of the Enchanting Kingdom? I don't think I know such a person." She was slightly surprised and asked, "What was my father's reaction?" When Old Master heard the news, he immediately rushed to the palace to meet the monarch. However, he couldn't even enter the palace gates. Later, when the monarch sent the Prime Minister to announce the decree, he was thrown out by Old Master. "That sounds like my dad's style of doing things." She couldn't help but chuckle. However, since the imperial edict didn't work, the monarch issued another imperial edict to inform everyone in the glorious Sun Nation that Mistress was conferred the title of Princess Qingning and the concubine of the Crown Prince of the Green Soaring Nation. "Princess Qingning?" Fengjiu chuckled. "This Murong Bo is so sure that I will follow his arrangements. After creating so much trouble, it will be embarrassing if he can't get out of this embarrassing situation." Seeing that she didn't seem to care, Lung Shuang asked, "Master, do you need to go back to the residence to deal with this?" "I need to cultivate during this period of time, so let's put this matter aside for now. If I don't go back, I don't think he will be able to do anything," she said casually as she took out the pill that she had just refined and handed it to Lung Shuang. Chapter 308. In the next month, I'm going to practice in seclusion. You should pay more attention to the situation at home. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important, she told him and walked towards the courtyard. After Lung Shuang responded, he did not follow her. Instead, he tidied up the things in the elixir department and turned to leave. After returning to the courtyard, Fengjiu took a bath and flashed into the space. Her qi cultivation was only at the martial master level. She planned to raise her cultivation to the peak of the Black Realm in half a month. In this space, there was rich spiritual power to help her practice. Also, her potions could help her improve her strength. What's more, 3 days outside was equivalent to 1 day inside. This time difference was her advantage in practice. Therefore, she was confident that she could break through to the peak of the Black Realm in half a month and reach the great martial mentor. Seeing that the sleeping little fire phoenix showed no signs of waking up, she found a place to sit down and began to practice with her legs crossed. Time passed by without anyone noticing. What caused people to be curious was that the Feng manor had not made any movements recently. They also rarely saw the Feng family's eldest young miss leave the manor. Only after asking around did they find out that the Feng family's eldest young miss was not in the manor, and Master Feng was in closed-door training. They thought that things would remain calm until Miss Feng returned, Old Master Feng came out of seclusion, or the Crown Prince of the Qingting Kingdom came in person to break the peace. However, they did not expect that under this peace, there was a murderous intent surging. Old White, let's go back home after a walk. Since Chinga is not home, how about I ask someone to give you an extra meal? On the mountain road, Feng Xiao, dressed in casual clothes, rode on Old White's back and took him for a walk. This was something he had to do every day recently. It was to help his daughter train Old White and reduce the fat on his body. Hiss. Hearing that there was an extra meal, Old White was very excited. His ponytail swung and even his rump shook, as if to tell him that this was a good idea and that he liked it. Ha ha ha. Okay, don't move around so that I don't fall off. Feng Xiao laughed heartily as he wrapped his legs around White's abdomen. He patted his head and said, "Actually, you have become much stronger these days. But even so, you can't cheat. You have to know that perseverance is the most important thing." Fart. White exhaled 2 puffs of air from his nostrils, then stomped his hooves and slowly walked forward. Suddenly, the trees on both sides of the mountain path swayed without any wind, and the lush leaves rustled. This made White, who was originally walking forward, stop in his tracks. He looked around left and right, and with a hiss, he turned around and was about to walk back. Feng Xiao also noticed that something was not quite right. His originally relaxed face darkened at this moment. His sharp gaze swept around the surroundings as he said in a deep voice, "Which friend has come? Why don't you come out and meet us?" As soon as he spoke, the surroundings became still, and it was as if even the wind had become still. However, in the next moment, a sharp arrow shot out from the lush trees with a swish, and it shot towards Feng Xiao, who was riding on Senior White's back with a fierce and murderous aura. Fart. Feng Xiao narrowed his eyes and dodged the sharp arrow. However, the second and third arrows came one after another with terrifying murderous intent. Fart. Fart. Clang. Clang. Chapter 309. Swoosh. The sharp arrow barely scratched his sleeve. It did not hurt his skin, but it tore his robe. The opponent's fierce killing intent made him not dare to be careless. He adjusted the Shen energy in his body, looked around, and entered a tense state to fight. After he swept away more than a dozen sharp arrows, 20 to 30 men in black rushed out. The leader was wearing a ghost mask, so people could not see his face clearly. However, the powerful aura on his body made Feng Xiao vigilant and suspicious. This kind of strength was extremely rare even in the entire country of Glorious Sunday. It was not something that could be easily asked to move. Then, who was this person? Why did he want to assassinate him? The leading black-clothed man's murderous gaze landed on Feng Xiao. He didn't say anything, but raised his hand and made a gesture. The surrounding black-clothed men rushed towards Feng Xiao in an instant. Long swords containing sharp profound energy auras attacked Feng Xiao. Sharp swords shot out from all around, emitting sharp killing intent. Streams of sword energy whistled through the air. Those men in black advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. Even when they attacked, some attacked and some defended. Obviously, they had received strict training. Clang. Feng Xiao waved the big saber in his hand, and a biting cold saber aura attacked with a whoosh, cutting the surrounding black-clothed men, forcing them to retreat a little. He rode on Larobai's back and did not want to fight. After opening a path, he shouted in a deep voice, "Larobai, let's go." He reined in the horse and was about to run away. However, when he was about to turn around, 2 masked grey-robed old men suddenly appeared in the air and struck out with their palms with the force of thunder. In an instant, the wind from the palms of the 2 men cut through the air with a powerful sound of airflow. The aura of Shen energy that was visible to the naked eye filled their palms. They were so fast and fierce that Feng Xiao did not have time to defend or dodge. He was knocked off Larobai's back. Bang bang. Puff. Feng Xiao only felt a splitting pain in his chest, as if his internal organs were being torn apart. The pain seeped into his bones, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. His entire body also fell to the ground with a bang. Fresh blood splattered all over Senior White's snow-white fur, like bloody flowers blooming in the snow, dazzling and terrifying. Feng Xiao, who had fallen to the ground, could not stop the momentum and rolled twice. Ignoring the severe pain in his body, he abruptly turned over and stood up. Unexpectedly, he spat out another mouthful of blood, and his whole body powerlessly fell to the ground. There were 20 to 30 black-clothed men around him. The leader of the group was strong, and the two grey-clothed old men who suddenly appeared were far stronger than him. They instantly analyzed the danger of his current situation. The disparity in strength between Fang Shuang and him was too great. There was no chance of victory. Seeing that the situation was very unfavorable for him, Feng Xiao did not hesitate to take out a signal flare and shoot it into the sky. He only hoped that reinforcements could come before he was killed. Otherwise, he was afraid that today would be the day he died. Bang! The signal flares that were as gorgeous as fireworks bloomed in the sky like flowers. A single signal flare caused 1,000 ripples. Kill him! Almost at the same time that the signal flare was shot, the leader wearing a ghost mask instantly shouted. However, when that voice was heard, Feng Xiao, who was on the ground, was shocked and looked up at him in disbelief. Chapter 310. At that moment, the people that saw the signal in the sky that clearly formed the character Feng were all shocked. That's the Feng Manor's signal. Could it be that something happened? That place seems to be near Liang Mountain. Ah! Someone exclaimed. Something must have happened to General Feng. Recently, he has been riding that strange white horse to the side of the mountain to train that fat horse. Once this was said, quite a few cultivators began to rush towards Liang Mountain. To them, Feng Xiao was the country's general. He was even more straightforward and righteous. If they did not know, it would have been fine, but if they knew, they would definitely help if they could. At the same time, when the people of the Feng Manor saw the signal, their hearts sank. They gathered their men and quickly rushed towards the signal. No one understood the meaning of the signal better than them. The Feng Manor had many kinds of signals, and the one that appeared in the sky was an emergency signal for help. How serious of a situation would the family head need to use this signal for help? The hearts of the Feng Manor's guards were heavy. At the same time that they rushed to help, the housekeeper rushed to the place where the old master was in seclusion. Seeing the fatal danger coming towards him, Feng Xiao, who could not even stand up, could not even talk about dodging or blocking. When he moved, his internal organs felt as if they were falling apart. The pain made it difficult for him to even breathe. With the danger approaching and the reinforcements not yet arriving, he could not help but feel a trace of sadness. However, in the next instant, his fighting spirit was ignited once again. His old white, who was to the side, neighed and immediately appeared in front of him to protect him. When the two old men attacked, he suddenly raised his hind legs and kicked. Using both legs, he kicked one of the old men away. The old man that had been kicked by the horse's hooves staggered backwards. Because the horse's hooves used a lot of force, he could not even stand steadily. After retreating a few meters, he fell to the ground. Holding his chest that had been kicked, he stared with wide eyes. When he was first kicked, he only felt a strong force, but after a while, he felt as if there was a force spreading out from where he was kicked, causing the blood in his chest to rush to his throat and overflow from his mouth. Wiping away the blood at the corner of his mouth in disbelief, the old man's eyes widened as he stared at the strange horse guarding Feng Xiao with astonishment and shock. The other old man also felt a trace of astonishment at this scene. The hand that was originally going to attack Feng Xiao's throat paused for a moment. In this moment, he saw that strange horse snort out 2 breaths from its nostrils, splashing up a cloud of dust and blurring his vision. In the haze, he saw the horse neighing, raising its front hooves and thrusting out. Bang! Ah! There was a hint of pain in his cries. That old man's fall was even more serious than the previous one. His entire body flew out and smashed into the ground. He even spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing his own clothes red. Fart! Seeing this shocking scene, not only was Feng Xiao, who had thought that he was going to die for sure, stunned, but the group of men in black and their leader were also stunned. What kind of cultivation did those 2 old men have? They were strong cultivators at the peak of martial great master. They had actually been sent flying by a strange horse. Chapter 3:11. His tiger eyes shot out raging flames as he looked towards the leader of the black-robed men and angrily said, "You want to kill me? It's not that easy." As soon as his voice fell, he waved the big saber in his hand, and a fierce saber aura with a strong murderous aura attacked the surrounding black-robed men. The saber aura whistled through the air, and cut some of the black-robed men who couldn't dodge in time, and broke up their defensive formation. He could still stand up after being injured by a peak martial great master. When the leader of the masked men saw this scene, his eyes slightly widened. Thinking of the thing he drank earlier, could it be medicine? Thinking of this, his heart shook. He didn't even have time to think about where the medicine came from. Instead, he immediately lowered his voice and sternly shouted, giving the order to kill. "Kill him. Don't let him go back alive." Once his voice fell, the surrounding black-robed men quickly surrounded and attacked. Because of the surging profound energy on everyone's body, the sword aura and murderous aura intertwined, forming a low airflow in the air. Kill. 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 Every shout contained an infinite amount of murderous aura. That sound shook the trees slightly and the sound reverberated in the air. Waves of murderous aura shot towards Feng Xiao, who was surrounded in the middle. The swift and fierce airflow caused small holes to appear on his casual clothes, and traces of the smell of blood permeated the air. Ha 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 ha. Feng Xiao took a big stride forward and stood perfectly straight. With one hand holding the large saber and the other clenched into a fist, he looked towards the sky and laughed out loud. The martial great master's aura from his laughter transformed into a visible airflow that rippled outwards like water. Those black-robed men held their heads and cried out miserably under the aura he released. Some of the sharp swords in their hands instantly fell to the ground, some rolled on the ground in pain, and some couldn't bear the pressure and started bleeding from their eyes and noses. Ah! Ah! Their screams were deafening and pierced through the sky, shocking everyone. The ear-splitting and vigorous laughter suddenly stopped. His tiger eyes shot out a sharp ray of light and his entire body emitted a strong and biting cold battle intent. The large saber in his hand, accompanied by the profound energy in his body, fiercely slashed towards the ground. His deep and vigorous voice was filled with anger as it fiercely roared out. "I'll show you what kind of person Feng Xiao, I'll show you what it means to hold back 10,000 men alone." Whoosh! Bang! Bang bang! The saber that landed on the ground seemed to cut through the air, making a sharp sound of airflow. When it landed on the ground, the airflow collided with the ground, making a loud sound of airflow and leaving a deep saber mark on the ground. That stream of air continued forward, splitting the men in black into two. In an instant, the thick smell of blood permeated the air. However, before everyone could react, he counterattacked with the large saber in his hand, and his entire body emitted an iron-blooded murderous aura. It was a bloodthirsty and ruthless aura that had been accumulated on the battlefield, and it was the shocking murderous aura of a true iron-blooded warrior. At this moment, Feng Xiao was so ferocious that it made one's heart tremble. He was like an Asura as he waved the large saber in his hand, reaping lives. When the large saber fell, it was accompanied by a fierce roar, followed by the shrill screams of the other party. Chapter 3:12. Because of his bloodthirsty savagery, because of his biting cold battle intent, those black-clothed men could not help but swallow their saliva and retreat. Their hearts were filled with fear and cowardice, and they did not even dare to accept the challenge. When the leader of the masked men saw the men in black retreating in fear, he shouted angrily, "Those who retreat will be killed without mercy." As soon as he said this, even though they were terrified, they had no choice but to fight. Everyone clenched the sharp swords in their hands and shouted loudly to boost their courage. Clang! Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Ah! The sound of swords clashing rang in the air along with the sharp sound of air currents. Sharp and mournful screams pierced through the air, startling the birds in the trees on both sides of the mountain path and causing them to flap their wings and fly high. As the broadsword fell, blood splashed out and dyed the ground red. As Feng Xiao fought, more and more corpses appeared on the ground. Some of them were headless, and some were chopped in half. The fear on the faces of the black-clothed men before they died was still on their faces. Their eyes were wide open in fear, and they could not close their eyes even when they died. Blood dyed Feng Xiao's robe red. There was his blood, and there was also the blood of the men in black. At this moment, he indeed proved what he had said before. One man can hold the pass against 10,000 men. Every single one of the black-clothed men who stepped forward died under his saber. The masked man could not help but sigh inwardly when he saw such powerful combat strength. Feng Xiao was indeed worthy of the title of General of the Kingdom, but even so, time was ticking away. If his reinforcements arrived, it would be even more impossible for him to kill him. Thinking of this, killing intent flashed in his eyes. He raised the sleeve arrow in his hand and aimed at the figure in the battle. Whoosh! The first arrow was shot and missed. Whoosh! The second arrow was shot and grazed his shoulder, but it still didn't hit a vital point. Just as he was about to shoot the third arrow, the two old men who had been slowed down by Larobai's kick stood up angrily. They stared at the white horse that was helping Feng Xiao fight and wanted nothing more than to go forward and kill it. However, after the previous scene, they knew that this white horse with a pair of dragon horns was a spiritual beast. Moreover, it was a rare spiritual beast. Therefore, they didn't want to kill it. Instead, they wanted to tame this spiritual beast after killing Feng Xiao. "Stand down. We'll kill Feng Xiao," the two old men said in unison. They raised their hands and motioned for the remaining men in black to stand down. After all, the difference in strength was too great. If they went forward to kill Feng Xiao, they would only be killed. After all, they knew that Feng Xiao wasn't an ordinary person. Almost immediately after hearing the two old men's words, the remaining 7 to 8 black-clothed men couldn't help but inwardly sigh in relief. Seeing that their masters didn't say anything, they secretly retreated. Feng Xiao's fighting strength was too terrifying. They had arrived with 30 people, but now, only a few of them were left. If they continued to fight, they would undoubtedly die here. Feng Xiao, who was covered in blood, turned around and swept his sharp gaze across the masked man. His gaze then landed on the two old men. To be honest, he wasn't confident that he could deal with two peak martial great masters. But he could stall for time. As long as he could stall for time until reinforcements arrive, he would have a chance to live. Do you want to stall for time until reinforcements arrive? Hihi, let me tell you, you don't have a chance. Chapter 313. As soon as the pressure of a peak martial great master was released, Feng Xiao, who had already suffered internal injuries, felt the blood in his heart surge towards his throat. He only felt a slight saltiness in his mouth as the taste of blood spread in his mouth, but he forcefully suppressed it. At this moment, the two old men's palms were filled with profound energy as they charged towards him. The speed of a peak martial great master had been raised to the highest point. It was so fast that he could not even see how they had attacked before he was sent flying. Bang! Bang! Two heavy blows landed on his chest. One of them had used a fist to strike him while the other had used a palm to strike him. Both attacks contained a powerful profound energy aura that was fatal and ruthless. Fart! Feng Xiao let out a muffled groan as blood spurted from his mouth. As he was sent flying, he felt an unbearable pain in his chest. While he was in a daze, the two old men's figures charged towards him once again. He only felt the wind from their palms striking towards the top of his head. Hiss! Larobai hissed angrily. When he saw one of the old men's palms striking towards Feng Xiao's head, he charged forward and fiercely collided with the old man, sending him flying. Damn it! The old man's palm was not able to land in time and his entire body was sent flying. The horse's strength was so strong that even a martial great master could not withstand Larobai's full force charge. His entire body rolled miserably on the ground and fell flat on his back. Bastard! When the other old man saw that the horse had ruined his plans again, he cursed angrily. He kicked a long sword from the ground and held it in his hand. He injected profound energy into it and slashed it towards Larobai. Originally, he did not intend to kill it, but it had ruined their plans again and again, so he could not let it live. Fart! Larobai exhaled 2 breaths from his nostrils as if he was mocking the old man for overestimating himself. He turned around and swung his tail at the old man. Fart! With a puff, a yellowish-brown smoke was released from its buttocks. The yellowish-brown smoke was like a poisonous fog and was extremely smelly. However, just like that, it sprayed onto the old man's face without any warning. It also swung its ponytail and slapped him, causing him to choke and faint. When they saw this scene, the remaining men in black and the masked man in the lead all took a step back in shock, avoiding the yellowish-brown smell that permeated the air. It was also at this moment that the masked man in the lead saw Larrabei cry out and lie down on the ground. He carried the heavily injured and dying Feng Xiao on his back and ran back. Seeing this, he reacted instantly. He raised his hand and aimed the sleeve arrow at Feng Xiao's back. With a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, the sleeve arrow shot out fiercely without hesitation. Swish! Ah! Feng Xiao, who was already on the verge of death, cried out in pain. A short sleeve arrow was stuck in his back, and his blood turned from red to black. He, who was originally able to sit up, was now lying on Larrabei's back, allowing him to gallop all the way back. The masked man, who was about to chase after them, faintly heard the arrival of reinforcements. He immediately shouted in a low voice, "Retreat!" As he led the rest of the men to retreat quickly, he looked back unwillingly. Although he did not see Larrabei die with his own eyes, he had suffered 2 palm strikes from 2 peak martial eminent realm experts and was even hit by his poisoned sleeve arrow. Even if the Deluo immortal came, he would not be able to save him. When he thought of this, he finally felt relieved. He quickly retreated and disappeared into the mountain path. Feng Xiao. Chapter 314. Hiss. Larrabei excitedly hissed when he saw the old man appear. No one knew how afraid he was that Feng Xiao would die like this. If he really died like this, wouldn't his master die of grief? In the blink of an eye, the old man came to Larrabei's side. He looked at his son, who had lost consciousness, with a poisoned sleeve arrow in his back and black blood oozing out. His heart trembled slightly. He carried him from Larrabei's back, took out an antidote with trembling hands and forced it into his son's mouth. "Leave a team to search. The rest of you, follow me back to the manor." After saying this, he carried Feng Xiao and quickly rushed back to the Feng manor. At the same time, Feng Jiu, who was cultivating in the origin space, suddenly felt uneasy. A feeling of panic took over her heart. Her heart thumped violently as if something bad had happened, making her unable to calm down and cultivate. Thus, she lightly exhaled and flashed out of the origin space. Just as she opened the door, she saw Lung Shuang's expression change as he hurriedly ran in. "Master, something happened at home." Hearing this, Feng Jiu's heart sank. She said, "I'll go back first. You follow me." With that, she had already rushed out. When everyone in Yunyu City saw the old master Feng carrying an unconscious Feng Xiao with an arrow in his back, the entire Yunyu City was in an uproar. It can't be. It really is Feng Xiao. Who is so daring to assassinate him? He's a martial ancestor. Hiss. It looks like his injuries are not light. There's an arrow in his back. The situation doesn't look good. Everyone discussed in low voices. They didn't expect someone to be able to injure Feng Xiao to this extent. Furthermore, it was in Yunyu City. It could be said that when they saw the scene of Feng Xiao being injured, some of the family heads began to speculate. When old Master Feng carried Feng Xiao back to the manor, the entire Feng manor was in a state of worry and unease. The doctors in the manor were immediately brought to Feng Xiao's courtyard for an examination. Feng Xiao's courtyard was surrounded by a circle of guards, and they were all on high alert. Old master, I'm afraid the patriarch is. After the doctor in the manor took the pulse, he was shocked. His face was pale as he knelt down. Even his words were trembling and he was unable to speak properly. Seeing this scene, the old man's heart sank. He tried his best to calm the panic and worry in his heart. His old voice was slightly deep as he said, "If you have something to say, say it. How is he doing? Not only is the patriarch poisoned, but his internal injuries are also very serious. His sternum has been shattered, and there is blood on his chest. I'm afraid he's doomed." After saying this, the doctor lowered his head, not daring to look at the old man's expression. He said in a low voice, "Also, The arrow in the patriarch's back cannot be pulled out. If it is pulled out, the patriarch will definitely die on the spot. Hearing this, the old man felt like the world was spinning. His entire body swayed. Luckily, Leng Hua supported him, so he did not fall down. "Grandfather, how is foster father?" Guan Shilin's deep and hurried voice came from outside. Following that voice, the door was pushed open, and he quickly walked in from outside. "You can leave first. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.